All right, welcome to another installment of the Superist Show ever. I think we've given up on the whole episode number thing.
This is
Uh,
90.
this is 90. Okay,
Yeah.
got it. This is episode 90 of the Superist Show ever. So today we're going back to a familiar topic. Andrew Yang seems to be on a crusade against the mentally ill,
Oh boy.
at least in his rhetoric. And again, don't like talking politics on this show, but when it when it pertains to what we do talk about, we're going to bring it up. And Yang once again has made some comments about the mentally ill and how violent they are. Oh boy.
Okay. Yeah. So last night you sent me evidently the mayoral debates are going on up in Yankee Land, and you sent me the link to our favorite candidate, who seems to have a hard on for people who are mentally unwell. So I'm gonna play the clip now, I guess, for everybody to hear, and I'm gonna actually, through the power of editing, just listen to it right now. So if you have it in front of you, go ahead and hit play.
Half of the attacks on Asian New Yorkers have been by the mentally ill. Well, they're walking around, they're mentally ill, they see someone who's different, and then they lash out. So this is such a crucial issue to return a sense of safety to our city. I agree with Ray that we do need to be much more aggressive about Kendra's law. Right now, the standard is this. Someone has to self-select and say, hey, I need help, get me services. A lot of people who need help don't have the capacity to raise their hand and say, I need help. So we have to get the people the help that they need, even if they don't know it yet. And we can do this. There's been a standard in the past where if someone is clearly mentally ill or in need of medical attention, we got them on meds, we got them that treatment. We need to rebuild the stock of psych beds so that there's some place to bring them and make sure that if they are in supportive housing, that they're being monitored so that they take their meds. Yes, mentally ill people have rights, but you know who else have rights? We do. The people and families of the city. We have the right to walk the street and not fear for our safety because a mentally ill person is going to lash out at us.
So what would you do when someone who is potentially violent doesn't come indoors?
Again, the standard should be that if someone's clearly mentally ill or a threat or unconscious or unresponsive, then we take them off of the streets and we bring them to a hospital or other facility where they get cleaned up, get treated, get medicated, and then we maintain that situation and until they're clearly not a threat to anybody.
Ms. Morales?
Okay, so that was a lot.
That was a lot.
Yeah, so what I'm probably going to do is splice in the little snippets that we refer to. Do you want to start off with this, dude?
I feel like I started off last time with my fire and brimstone for Yang. So how about you give us the start?
All right, well, I'll ask you because as we all know, I'm down in the South. So this is a little out of my sphere of normal day-to-day things. But like the statement in the beginning that, what did he say? More than half of the attacks against Asian Americans are from the mentally unwell. Like, you're up north. Is this like, are there a lot of unwell people who are out on the streets just attacking people? Is that something that's happening up there?
Um, I've never personally witnessed it, and I've never read a story about it. No, I mean, I won't discount that it's happening because I'm sure it is. There's been a crisis for the mentally ill in this country for 50 years. There haven't been adequate services for them, and New York City is a hotbed of homelessness just because of how it is. So, is it outside the realm of possibility that he's close to right? No, but I would be surprised. And the other issue is, what is he qualifying as a mental illness? Because, okay, somebody with depression attacks an Asian person. Uh, can we really say that that's because of their mental illness? No, probably not. Um, he's he's using a causation without correlation fallacy to attack the mentally ill.
Because yeah, I mean that was a part of like some of my next questions was like, if it is the case that there is, I don't know, like a walking apocalypse of mentally unwell people, the second part of my question would be, are they indeed attacking Asian Americans? And is it because of what he claims is that they are different? Because last I checked, everybody's different from everybody.
Like there has been a rise in anti-Asian violence because of COVID.
Really?
Yes, people associate Asian people because, frankly, of ignorance with China and the Chinese Communist Party, and by extension, COVID. So there has been a noted rise. The FBI crime statistics bear out. There has been a notable rise in anti-Asian violence.
Really?
Yes.
That is the dumbest thing. I mean, I don't doubt it, but it's the dumbest thing I've heard. People are really like anti-Asian because of a virus?
Yes.
This is Earth. That's right.
Yeah, I was about to say, remember what planet you're on,
Yeah, that's right.
and then
That's
remember what country on that planet you're on.
right. But do you think this guy's legitimately using the whole Asian American and violence being perpetuated against him? Do you think he's using it legitimately, or is this just, you know, trying to get a certain voter block?
Okay, that's a hard question because I do believe that he's genuinely concerned about anti-Asian violence. After all, he is Asian. And any decent person would be concerned about that, especially one who's running for mayor of a major city that has a high Asian population. That is something to worry about. But is he scapegoating a group of people because it's easier? Yeah, I think he is.
Okay.
And I think I said on our last show about Yang that I don't believe that he is acting with any malicious intent, and that I think he's just ignorant. This shows me malicious intent.
This shows you what about this particular clip shows you malicious intent?
Before it was just, oh, mentally ill people are making a mess. That's what he was saying before.
Mm-hmm.
Now he's going the extra mile and equating violence against a certain group with the mentally ill community. He is actively creating a link where there is none. Before he was just blaming mentally ill people for being mentally ill. Now he's creating a link where there may not even be one.
I don't know, but this is just the way I look at it. Is I will be traveling up to that part of the country very soon to spend some time up there, so I'll firsthand be able to know if there is this epidemic of mentally unwell people who are just out on the streets. But I would just like to point out, I mean, it's like, well, mental illness is a symptom of something else anyway. So maybe uh, if you guys have this epidemic of mentally unwell people going around up there, maybe the question should start to be asked as to what is the cause of this epidemic?
Or what is the solution to this epidemic? But we can't talk about that because when we start to talk about getting people help for their mental illness, we enter this weird territory of some people saying, "No, that's socialism. You can't do that." Why not? Why can't we help the mentally ill?
Right. Well, I think what is what is very thin ice and a lot of what he said to me anyway is the some people will what did he say? He said they will self-volunteer that they need help, and that there are some people who don't have the capacity to do that. And then and which is true. I agree. There are
Yes,
some people who don't.
absolutely.
But it just sounds dangerous to me when you add, or they don't know they're unwell yet, because that gets into some thought crime-ish type
Okay, I
vibration
have
for me.
I have very complicated feelings on that
Okay.
because so there is an element of truth in what he's saying. There is a subset of people with mental illnesses. I'm specifically thinking of schizophrenia and bipolar disorder that don't know that they're mentally ill. They just don't because um, I know you've studied this, so I'm repeating what you already know. There's a thing called insight
Hmm.
with mental illness. So take the high end of the spectrum for insight, OCD. People with OCD have obsessive thoughts and intrusive thoughts, but because they have a high level of insight, they know it's their mental illness. I know because I have OCD, and this is how my brain works. I get thoughts that I don't think, and I know, okay, it's my mental illness. It's my brain misfiring. But on the low end of that spectrum, you have schizophrenics who have paranoid delusions, or bipolar people who don't realize they're in a manic or depressive episode. And those people they genuinely don't know they're mentally ill. I agree with you that we're getting into thought crimey territory, but there is an element of truth in that.
Yeah, I mean, and like I said, it feels like dangerous territory, but then again, it is also territory that you have to traverse, because I can relate with it, in that um, I used to say I had OCD, but then it was revealed to me that unless it's debilitating, it's preferences. You have very specific preferences. If it's debilitating, then that's obsessive compulsive disorder. And that was the way that I framed it. But I do relate with what you're talking about, what he's talking about, I guess to a degree, with complex post-traumatic stress disorder, because I had never heard of it when I started to experience the symptoms. I had no clue. With PTSD, I knew, like right from the beginning. I knew from day one I had it. So when the auditory and visual flashbacks would happen, I knew that's what it was. I had the insight. But with complex post-traumatic stress disorder, it caught me completely unaware. I had no idea what it was. I would
Mhm.
literally be happy in one room. I would walk to the other room and I would literally freeze and lock up and go into a completely foreign emotion. I had no insight. I had never heard of complex post-traumatic stress disorder. Never.
Exactly. And look, I don't know that that's what Yang is trying to relate, but that's true. That happens. And we have to address those people first.
Yeah, but his apparent solution to it, I am not
Uh,
married to the idea of it at all.
oh, trust me, I'm not either. Um, I don't love his thoughts on uh, the mentally ill. I don't love the idea, as we talked about last time, of increasing the amount of police to respond, because I think that is putting kerosene on a gas fire already.
Yeah, yeah. The police dealing with this issue is not. Now he doesn't really bring up the police so much in this clip, but when you bring up the police dealing with this issue, no, dude, no,
No,
not at
no,
all. I'm gonna go ahead. Let me
bad.
play this clip again, like from the middle when he starts talking about some of his solutions. I'm gonna go ahead and play that now.
Okay.
Build the stock of psych beds so that there's some place to bring them, and make sure that if they are in supportive housing, that they're being monitored so that they take their meds. Yes, mentally ill people have rights, but you know who else have rights? We do. The people and families of the city. We have the right to walk the street and not fear for our safety because a mentally ill person is going to lash out at us.
So what would you do when someone who is potentially violent doesn't come indoors?
Again, the standard should be that if someone's clearly mentally ill or a threat or unconscious or unresponsive, then we take them off of the streets and we bring them to a hospital or other facility where they get cleaned up, get treated, get medicated, and then we maintain that situation until they're clearly not a threat to anybody.
Ms. Morales?
So, from what I'm hearing, okay, and I'll give this guy the benefit of the doubt without being up north myself, but having been surrounded with people with a myriad of Baskin-Robbins mental illnesses and emotional illnesses and stuff like that. I mean, it's the world that I walk in. So I'll give him the benefit of the doubt that there's this epidemic going on up there. But where I'm starting to get concerned is the solutions that he's bringing forth.
Hmm.
Um, and so do you have the same concerns? Let's see if we're on the same page. Go ahead.
Yeah. I the clip wasn't loading for me again. If I remember correctly, he wanted to invest more in institutions to house the mentally ill.
That the issues I'm taking issue, the things that I'm taking issue with is one, there are some people who will self-select for services. There are some people with insight. There are some people who don't have the capacity because they don't have insight.
Hmm.
And then I don't know the exact phraseology, but he said that the ones who need help that just don't know they need it yet. Well, then that means somebody else is going to have to determine whether or not that person needs help. And where this gets dangerous is, well, it opens up a can of worms
So,
because, go ahead.
yeah. No, so what I was going to say was I've had this concern as well. But where I think you can mitigate it Um, I think you should only be able to institutionalize somebody like that if they are an imminent threat. So I don't think you need any improvement to the laws that are already there. The laws that are already there allow for forced institutionalization if the person is an imminent threat rather to the people around them or themselves. So I don't think you need to change the laws at all there. I do think there needs to be more funding for mental health facilities, and I do think there needs to be more access to mental health services. I think that's where most of our problem is. We also need to get rid of the societal stigma around mental illness.
Yeah, the stigma's got to go. Now, what you said was interesting about the laws up there because I don't I don't know if we've ever discussed this before, maybe in passing, and I try to be very discreet about this, especially on recordings. But down here in Georgia, anyway, there's something called a 1013. Have we ever discussed that before?
No.
Okay. So, like you said, the laws up there, or if somebody is an imminent threat, then, they're obviously mentally unwell, and that's the reason for their threat. They can be institutionalized, forcibly institutionalized. Not in Georgia, dude. Georgia's a little bit more, I don't know, witch hunty in that if two or more quote unquote family members go before a judge and say that you're acting, I don't know, out of character, whatever that means, you can be 1013, which is a forcible commitment, where you are forcibly taken to a psych ward. And
Yeah,
most people who go ahead.
yeah, don't love that.
Yeah, and I could tell you why this causes me a great concern is because when you're in a predominantly fundamental Christian area that has a certain belief structure, and you begin to exhibit other forms of spirituality that are a little foreign, a little alien, or a little weird to them, that constitutes in a judge's eyes here in Georgia as erratic behavior enough to where they can send armed guards, police officers, law enforcement officers that can, because two or more family members who don't understand your belief structure or accept it, they can put you in chains and they can put you in the back of the car and kidnap you and take you to a psych ward to be, if you're not witty enough and don't know your rights enough, forcibly medicated, forcibly chemically lobotomized because you're different.
Yeah,
So,
see, Yankee Land is very different from that, in my experience anyway. Maybe I'm just ignorant to the laws of other areas, but it's a lot harder to get forcibly committed around here. I know because some of my friends have been threatened with forcible committing, and it's never happened.
so what is it when I tell you that, when I tell you that somebody literally, and I speak from personal experience, just in case people can't glean from it, I have been forcibly committed because I have belief structures that involve reincarnation, lighting incense, altars, things like that. Because there are people who have a fundamentalist Christian background, they thought that it was fit and right for them to have me forcibly committed, and that was all it
And
took.
instead of thinking you're just a little kooky like I do.
Yeah, instead of accepting diversity and that, hey, everybody
Yeah,
doesn't believe like
yeah,
you believe, right?
yeah. I
So
accept it. I think you're a little kooky, but I accept it.
eccentric, uh,
Eccentric.
but certainly my eccentric lifestyle doesn't warrant me being kidnapped and then forcibly chemically lobotomized.
No,
Like that
of course
to
not.
you, doesn't that sound like the Dark Ages?
Yeah, that sounds like the South has suspended habeas corpus.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was. That's exactly
Yeah.
what it is. And
And
so
yeah,
for somebody who's personally went through this, now I'm thankful for the experience because it was like, well, this is an interesting experience. Now I know what every philosopher or wise person or shaman or anybody who's had any kind of a spiritual experience or spiritual revolution in their life, you know, this is kind of what they go through. So I'm thankful for it, but it's still dark agey. It's like, you mean to tell me you could take somebody's freedom from them because they're different than you? Really? That's insane, man. That's absolutely insane. And what was ironic about it, I don't know if I've ever told you this story, but when I was getting interviewed by the head psychiatrist of this outfit, she was a Hindu, right? So she's going over like what I've been accused of for my mental illness, and it involves reincarnation. I said, Doctor So and So, I won't say her name, Doctor So and So, are you Hindu? Yes. I said, you believe in reincarnation? She says, yes. I said, well, if I'm crazy, you're crazy. Maybe we should switch seats. You know what I mean? You know, and she didn't even understand why I was there. She was like, this is ridiculous. This is the most ridiculous thing I've seen in 20 years of psychiatric practice. You were an odd case, Mr. Crumpton, is what she said. So
that was an understatement.
it was an understatement, yeah, but
You are an odd case.
But what was frightening about it, Dylan, was now I know my rights, right? So anybody who's never been to a place like that, whether self-selecting or being forcibly taken there, um, I don't know if I would say it's a place of healing. Those places, I'm going to say that they're not. Okay, I'm going to say that they're not. As somebody who's been through it, because the first order of the day is to literally zombify you. The first thing that they want to do is completely zombify you. They want to give you some type of a pill to put you out. Okay. And I saw people coming in and getting chemically lobotomized. And I mean, it was sad. It's very sad. And I saw the way that in this particular hospital, the staff they don't treat you human. They're not there with a loving, caring heart. A lot of them should not even be in that profession at all, because they're doing more damage to people who are scared, people who are frightened, who are probably going through some traumatic event in their life. And they end up in a place like that. They're chemically lobotomized. They don't know what's going on, and they're held there until a judge decides that they're sane. Like the judge is the dictate of that. It's not a cool place to be. And thankfully, I was able to stand my ground on not taking any medications. I told him it's against my First Amendment. According to my spirituality, I can't have any of those chemicals in my body. So you can do whatever you want to. You can strap me down and inject me with it, but we'll be tied up in federal court for the next 8 years because you'd be violating my First Amendment. These are the supplements I will take: vitamin B, DMAE, L-tryptophan, vitamin C. And that was enough for them. So I managed to keep my wits about me. But everyone else, unfortunately, that I saw come in there because they lacked the knowledge of their own personal rights, they would come in, they would get basically, what's the word I'm looking for, anesthetized to life. I mean, they'd be put into a coma for quite some time.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if this guy's ever been through that, Yang, but
No, I don't think he has.
yeah, and I don't think anybody who's actually been through the process of that is going to see that as a solution, especially for people who are mentally unwell.
Mm-hmm.
Especially for people who are mentally unwell.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry, but if that's his solution, I speak from firsthand experience. I think it does more, that particular situation does a lot more harm than good for people. Because when they're done with their hold, because here in Georgia, it's like a 72-hour hold. I was held longer than that, thank you very much. But it's a 72-hour hold. But basically, they point you to a facility in the area where you can become a regular customer of things like lithium, Zyprexa, Xanax. That's it. I mean, they point you to the pill mill, and that's their solution for mental unwellness around these parts. So if that blueprint is fitting over New York, Yang can go suck a dick.
I couldn't say it better if I tried.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah. Nope, I can't with Yang. Luckily for everyone, Yang is not going to win the race.
Well,
so we don't have to worry about that.
But it is interesting. I mean, the issue is interesting. And now I have my theories, and I think I told you before we started recording, I might get a little metaphysical here.
Oh boy, I was kind of hoping we'd avoid that.
We could break it down scientifically, but a part of me does, I mean, without going there yet, to experience it myself, a part of me does believe that if I were to step foot in New York City, there probably is um, an egregious amount of people who are mentally unwell. And one of my beliefs around that, and I'm not getting all conspiracy theory-ish, just saying the city of New York is, even on just, you could take it metaphysically, but just on a physics level, there are so much emotional and mental energy in that area of the world in New York, especially and specifically since the traumatic events of, September 11th, 2001. You know what I mean? Like I know people one to one who have PTSD because they were, across the Bay Area or whatever you call it, looking at the towers as they fell, and they still live with PTSD. So I can only imagine that on a wide scale collective consciousness level of New York, it clearly has had an effect that mental unwellness is probably more prevalent there than in other parts of the country, I would imagine.
Yeah, I mean, okay, if that's as metaphysical as you're gonna get, we're good.
I mean, well, we can also go, well, why? Because recently, I know I've talked to you about it. We had the what do they call it? The Johnny Cash eclipse here, the Ring of Fire eclipse.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Did you watch it, or did you try to see it? It's pretty early in
No,
the morning.
I don't even think I was awake.
Maybe it was like 6 or early in the morning. But the closest that I could have gotten to see it, and I saw a little bit of it, was up in South Carolina. So I took a trip to South Carolina to watch the eclipse, do my weird cemetery stuff, which I would get institutionalized for if certain people had their way. But on the way back, I stopped in a little town here in Georgia, which is really creepy. It's a little town called Milledgeville, right? And anybody who's seen a horror movie or has looked into haunted places or occult places or anything like that, if you might have come across Central State Hospital in Milledgeville, Georgia. So did you take a look at that video I sent you about that place?
No, but just I didn't get a chance to, but just the picture of it. Nope, I would never go near it.
Oh my God. So let me read a brief Wikipedia page and then I'll tell you some personal stuff. So Central State Hospital.
Am
Uh,
am I gonna be spooked right before I go to bed?
I don't know, dude. I guess it's a matter of your perspective. It's a matter
All
of your
right,
perspective.
well, let's do
Let's see.
this.
Let's do this. So what the Wikipedia says is Georgia State Mental Asylum, located in Milledgeville, Georgia, now known as the Central State Hospital, has been the state's largest facility for treatment of mental illness and developmental disabilities, in continuous operation since accepting its first patient in December 1842. The hospital was founded as the Georgia State Lunatic, Idiot, and Epileptic Asylum, and was also known.
Oh, the
Yeah,
idiot! Wow, that's
yeah.
awful.
Yeah, most of the original diagnosis that came through for these people who were forcibly put here was idiot. There,
Wow,
yeah,
that's impressive.
there was also jealousy was a diagnosis. Jealousy.
Don't
Uh,
think that's how that works, but okay.
yeah. Uh, some of the original diagnosis for being forcibly committed here, possibly, probably for a lot of people, it was their lifetime, was for not being a Christian. Just saying. So just saying. Anyway, as the Georgia State Lunatic, Idiot, and Epileptic Asylum, it was also known as the Georgia State Sanitarium and Milledgeville State Hospital during its long history. By the 1960s, the facility had grown into the largest mental hospital in the world, contending with Pilgrim Psychiatric Center in New York. Its landmark Powell Building and the vast abandoned 1929 Jones Building stand among some 200 buildings on 2,000 acres that once housed nearly 12,000 patients. The Central State Hospital complex currently encompasses about 1,750 acres, a pecan grove and historic cemeteries, and serves about 200 mental health patients. As of 2016, the facility offers short stay acute treatment for people with mental illness, residential units, and habitation, let's say, yeah, habitation programs for people with developmental disabilities, recovery programs that require a longer stay and specialized skill, yada, yada, yada. Now, I don't really think that's true because it closed down. So whoever wrote this Wikipedia page, see people, the internet does not know everything. This Wikipedia page is out of date because that place is closed down. Okay. But anyway, I digress. So That's what Wikipedia says. Now, I sent you some pictures, and I'll tell you the personal history around this place. Now, I don't know, but I've been told. A big leg woman ain't got no soul. No, that's a Led Zeppelin lyric. Sorry. I don't know, Dylan, but I've been told. We all know that the city of Washington, D.C. is laid out like a pentagram. That's verifiable, right? Because the architects of that place were occultists, and they knew how to use certain geometry and geography to harness energy. This is not too kooky. This is some Nikola Tesla type stuff. Would you agree?
Um, for the sake of the discussion, sure.
Okay. Do you agree that Nikola Tesla existed?
Of course he did.
Okay. Do you agree that Nikola Tesla probably knew more about harnessing energy than other people of his day?
Yeah,
Okay.
I think that's, yeah.
Would it be a stretch that the way that he knew how to harness that energy to some would appear to be, I don't know, magic?
No, that's not necessarily a stretch yet.
Okay. So we're not too out there in Cookieville. So you're not going to call a judge to have me 1013. This is science,
Yeah,
right?
nope, not yet. I'm sure we'll get there.
You get
But
there. Right. So anyway, the architects of our capital, or the capital, DC, they were, in my opinion, they were doing like the ancients, and they were harnessing energy, be it torsion physics, be it whatever, quantum energy, I don't know, um, through the way that they laid out the streets. Now, the legend is that the same guy who designed the streets of DC designed the streets of Milledgeville, Georgia, because Milledgeville used to be the capital of Georgia, right? So I haven't Google Earthed it to see if Milledgeville is laid out like a pentagram. However, um, it makes sense. I mean, like the coordinates, I'm looking at the coordinates, and the coordinates of Milledgeville is like 33.3 degrees north. Right? So it's like, okay, well, there you go. There's that. Um, and I know that around Georgia, even in my lifetime, it was the biggest legend. Like if you didn't behave, like it was, how parents have these threats, these looming threats, like if you didn't behave, you'd get sent to Milledgeville. Or it's a saying around here. They're gonna send you to Milledgeville, you know, which was the most terrifying thing you could hear coming up. It's like a Freddy Krueger story. You know what I mean?
mm-hmm.
Like Milledgeville State Hospital. Because people who would go there, dude, they were there for like they forcibly put you there forever until you died. Okay? Like go rent Silent Hill, and that's what this place looks like. And it is like a town within the town. And I had been there the first time I ever went there, not as not as a patient, mind you. This is why I was so terrified of psychology. Was I had went there when it was still in operation. I think it was around 1996 or seven, something like that. I went to go visit somebody who had been institutionalized there. Dylan, they were still doing things like electroshock therapy. Okay. This place, when you get into the history of it, they were doing like forced lobotomies. I mean, it wasn't even that too awful long ago in the span of human history where they were still shackling them. You know,
No,
it was,
don't like that.
yeah, dude. I mean, when I was there, when I was a teenager, it was like walking into that movie, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, where people were walking around with invisible boom boxes. The tile was like a grimy green from a different dimension. Uh, it was insane. There, you did not feel compassion there. You did not feel that it was a place of healing, but there was certainly some chaotic energy going on, man. And like I know we've spoken about, I'm sensitive to energy around areas. I can, I can, I don't know if it's my imagination, knowing the history of certain plots of land, but I can feel energy. Like I could feel either horror, pain, suffering, or something on the positive spectrum. But this place was like walking into like the creepiest horror movie ever when I was there, and it was still in operation. You could hear people getting shocked. You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
So I don't know. All I know is that that was the feel that I got from the place, and I had not been back there since I was a teenager until this past week. And I even had trouble finding it, so I had to Google it. And then, when I finally got to the area, it literally is like a city within the city of Milledgeville that is completely grown over. There's probably going to be pictures in the slideshow. But it's the creepiest fucking looking thing ever, right?
Yeah, it's a creepy, creepy looking place.
Creepy, and like I didn't find the cemetery. I don't know if I'm ever going to go back there. I don't know, but there is a cemetery not too far that has 25,000 unmarked graves. Okay, now that's creepy.
Yeah, no, I don't like any of that.
It's a whole lot of not okay. And
Yeah, I'm not a fan of any of this.
right. And Dylan, if you actually went to this property, like if you now technically it's trespassing if you go there. So I was technically trespassing. But this place is literally it's like a hidden city within a city, and it is completely deserted, completely I mean it's not completely grown over, but it is the creepiest place. And I don't get the willies easy. I mean, it didn't give me the willies, like I'm not afraid of stuff like that, but I could certainly feel it, right? And I'm sitting here going, they didn't have any psychiatrists on staff when this place was running 12,000 people. Most of the orderlies were the former patients who they didn't have any other job to go to. Okay.
That
So,
seems wonderful.
right. And there were scores upon scores of stories of clear abuse. Clearly, I mean, there were so many mysterious deaths that took place, and there's 25,000 unmarked graves on this property. So, Dylan, you cannot tell me that some occultist somewhere, whether you agree with the technology that an occultist or a group of occultists were using, but I'm so sorry. When I went to that area and I looked at it and know a little bit of the history growing up with the mythos of it, that facility to me looks like it was harnessing the energy of, I guess you could say, mentally unwell people as a capacitor, like a temple or a shrine to human suffering. And when you step foot on the property, you can feel it.
Yeah, I don't know that necessarily agree. I think it's a shrine to human suffering in a different way. Um, just in the just in the literal sense versus the harnessing energy sense. I don't see what you're seeing there, but I mean, it sounds like a horrible place built upon human suffering.
Well, do you think that? I mean, do you personally think, like when I was a kid and I would read books about ghosts and hauntings and stuff, the conclusion that I came to, and it was, I think I was like 12 or 13 when I read this book about paranormal activity as a scientist, because even though I do dabble in the esoteric and things like that, I always approach it scientifically. Like, how can we explain this with physics? You know what I mean? Like quantum physics. But I need something to go on. But there was one story I read in a paranormal book about a haunting, and the people who were researching the haunting of the house, they kept seeing this girl, this little girl. I don't know. Come to find out, she wasn't dead. Like they found the previous owner, and she was an adult, and she told them about some traumatic events that happened there. So the author of the book was basically his premise was that in certain areas, when a massive amount of energy, in this case traumatic of energy, happens, because we as human beings, we generate an energy field. We know this is not too kooky, this is science. We emit an energy field. Well, some people who emit a lot of emotional or mental energy, when they undergo a traumatic event, it sticks to the matter of, I don't know, the old house or the soil beneath them. It sticks and it plays like a record. So do you think that that's like, do you think that's scientifically sound, or do you think that's too metaphysical, or what are your thoughts on that?
I, I think that's a little too. I'm not a scientist, so I don't know, but I think that's a little too metaphysical for my tastes.
But you wouldn't rule it completely out.
I wouldn't rule. There are very few things I would rule completely out.
So if that's possible, maybe a lot of these hauntings or haunted properties, maybe that is what it is. Now, I think that's what it is, because Dylan, say what you will, I know I can go on certain areas and I can feel energy that is foreign to me. It's not me. It's not coming from me, but I can unequivocally feel it.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I mean, and it seems to me that is possible. It seems to me if you could pick up a conch shell and hear the ocean.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't rule it out. I mean, the conch shell in the ocean example is a good one. I wouldn't rule it out entirely because of that.
Yeah, well, I think it's, I mean, not getting too far into my travels throughout the multiverse, but it's to me sounds scientifically sound. Uh, I've I've had experiences and had witnesses to the experiences that this type of physics or quantum physics is true, that it does have an effect. And so I look at it and I go, well, I know I'm not the only one that believes that. And not only am I not the only one, but there are others who have the means to build a facility this big at 33.3 degrees north in Georgia, uh, to harness that energy if it were possible. Um, I think it. I'm sorry, but and I'm a skeptic when it does come to things like this. But I've been to the territory, to the property, I've been there. It's documented, and I think that that's exactly what it
Mm-hmm.
was. It feels like such a concentrated point on the map for the sole purpose of harnessing sorrow at its most exquisite level. Just to look at the place, even images of it, it's like they designed that as a temple to pain, in my
Yeah,
opinion.
that place is creepy. I will not take that away from you.
Right.
That place is
Uh,
very creepy.
yeah, yeah. So of course, me being me, I did do a little bit of my sorcery stuff there to try to ease up some of that suffering. But I'll tell you what, I don't know. I don't know. Be it I've also talked to therapists. I know we don't have much more time, but I've talked to a therapist who are also spiritually inclined, that they have moral issues when it comes to diagnosing people, because it's like, who am I to say that that person isn't seeing into other realms of realities that we just can't see? Like, they always say that the veil between madness and genius is very thin, and I agree. I agree. I think that madness is the site of unorganized genius, if that makes sense.
Um, I, I, what you're saying makes sense. I don't agree. I think there is just genuine madness.
I mean, yeah, that exists. I mean, it's got to exist. I believe in chemical imbalances and things like that, but I do know that sometimes a person in my world, Dylan, can have that third eye where they see into a spiritual realm. Um, they're all around. The ones who don't get forcibly committed are the ones who have their wits about them to not let others in on it. Like, they can see into that realm and be in the same room with you, but they're not dumb enough to let you know they see it.
Mm.
Whereas somebody who would easily be classified as mad is somebody who's like, does everybody else see that pink elephant over there? Right? Yeah.
Yeah,
But people like myself, they see it. We just don't say anything. It's like, yeah, it's
right,
there.
right.
You're going for nappy time, buddy. Just say it.
I am.
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, it was creepy. And this guy Yang popping up talking about, taking people to facilities. I don't like where he's going with it, because where he's going with it ultimately, when you let the government do it, especially, is going to end up like this place, Central State Hospital. And that is not good for anybody at all. I don't think, man. No. But just saying, I mean, if this is, Wang might need to rethink his solution. That's all I'm saying, because ultimately
Yang.
that solution. Is it
Mhm.
Yang? What did I say?
I thought you said Wang.
Wang, Yang, Yang, Wang, whatever. Yin Yang. I don't know. Just whenever you
That.
start talking about hauling people off to psych wards, this is where it goes if it's left unchecked, or governed by ignorance, I would say.
Yeah, there are ways to do it that are okay, but there are also these.
Yeah. Yeah. And him, yeah, the statement about monitoring them to make sure they stay on their meds, that's a totally different Superist show, because who defines meds, right?
Yeah, That's another fun discussion.
Maybe for another time, Mr. Wade. I think we've beaten this psych ward to death.
I think we have, but I think it was good.
Yeah, and if anybody happens to be in the Georgia area, you want to get the willies, go to Milledgeville, man, and check this place out.
I will be avoiding it like the plague.
Yeah, just look at pictures through the safety of the interweb.
Exactly.
Because I would imagine that especially if you do dabble in metaphysics, walking onto these grounds, you will probably leave with parasites. Is all I'm saying. So you might not want to do that if you ain't got your heart right. So other than that, Dylan, I am out for the evening. I believe you are too.
I am indeed.
All right, man. So thanks,
This
guys,
was a productive night.
I think so. Psych wards, metaphysics, ghosts, yeah, reincarnation. It's all good. That's what we
All
do.
right.
All right.
That was the super show. That was the super show ever, episode 90. We hope you enjoyed. Tune in next time for some very interesting discussions with guest hosts. I think we've got Rebecca Tripp and Megan. I'm not sure what her last name is.
Bear misspelled.
Megan Bear misspell coming up next.
Yeah. All right.
Stay tuned.
All right, man. Later.
Later.